Hi, welcome to Movie Review Mom. Today I'm reviewing the movie, The Green Book. I loved this movie and I give it a score of an A. Yay! It's rated PG-13. It's 2 hours and 10 minutes long, and it's actually inspired by a true story. It will open your eyes and your heart. Before watching this movie, I had no idea such a guidebook existed. A green book. It was an actual booklet that identified which restaurants and motels were the ones where African American travelers could be served between the years of 1936 and 1966. Its subtitle was called The Negro Motorist. It's amazing to me that such a book actually existed or had to exist. So far from being a buddy road trip flick, this is a powerful film, and it actually won the People's Choice Award at the Toronto International Film Festival in September of 2018. I hope it gets nominated for an Oscar for Best Picture. I kind of have a thing about Best Picture. It should be a movie that everybody can go see. I don't like them when they're rated R and they're like, you know, really inappropriate for families. I want it to be a movie where everybody can go and enjoy it and learn from it and be inspired by it. And this movie certainly fits that category. It's really a lovely movie, and I hope that more people will start talking about it. It's kind of flown under the radar for a lot of people, but it's really good, and it's still in theaters. So, of course, I don't know when you're watching this review, but it's in theaters the day that I'm filming this review. A few quick tips for parents, and that is that there is some profanity. There's an F-bomb, but only one. There's some racial slurs, including the N-word. There's a lot to talk to your children about in this movie. Black versus white, rich versus poor, classy versus trashy, history, dignity, self-control, and really so much more. There's lots of smoking and drinking. And Viggo Mortensen, who everybody loves from the Lord of the Rings trilogy, he wears boxers and a wife-beater t-shirt in a lot of scenes in this movie. And it's not horrible, but I'm just giving you the heads up. However, you do see two naked homosexual men on the floor in a bathroom at like the YMCA. Their naughty bits are covered up, but there's some discussion about what happens there. You don't see any action or anything, but that's a thing. It's a scene. And then one other tip for parents is your kids may not be familiar with a lot of the music in this movie. So maybe to kind of get them in the mood, or even after the movie, if they're now interested, have them watch some YouTube videos and introduce them to artists like Chubby Checker, Sam Cooke, Aretha Franklin, Little Richard, and they're going to be introduced to some really great music. Music is a huge part of the story, and this is actually based on a true story. At the very end of the movie, you get to see the real picture or pictures of the real people, and I always love that. It's a story about Dr. Shirley, who was an African-American pianist living up in New York City, very, very famous and successful. And he's also very eclectic. He literally sits on a throne in his apartment in New York City. And so he's very highbrow. And he wants to go on a tour down south, which at the time in the 1960s was extremely dangerous for African Americans, as you can imagine. And so he recognizes the need that he needs to have a driver and a little bit of protection. And so he hires Viggo Mortensen, and they're an unlikely pairing. Viggo, at the beginning of the movie, his character, is very racist. And of course, by the end of the movie, both characters have a lot of character development. And I always appreciate a good character arc where they both learn and grow, as do some of the other characters in the movie, the other real people in the movie. And in fact, speaking of real people, some of the real descendants of the Viggo Mortensen character, Tony, are actually in some of the dinner scenes where they're eating Italian food. It's interesting because it's not just about the African American community, it's also about the Italian American community. And I really like that. And the blend and the friendship and the tolerance and the understanding, and as they try to learn from each other. Some other things that I really, really like are that well, when Dr. Shirley is talking, he's so offended by the bad grammar that people use around him. And I feel the same way. I'm a little bit of a grammar Nazi. I'm an author, and I feel like I do a pretty good job editing my own books. I do have a professional editor that works with the publishers that I work with, but I've taught English for many years, and anyway, that just made me laugh out loud. I always appreciate clever and artistic transitions between scenes, and there are quite a few of those. There's lots of humor, sometimes very subtle. But another thing about this movie that I thought was interesting was that it was written and directed by Peter Farrelly, who normally does movies with his brother, such as Dumb and Dumber, There's Something About Mary, and the two brothers have created, you know, their movie-making history. And this is the very first movie that Peter has done by himself. And I'm proud to say he did a great job. Those other two movies that I mentioned are pretty dumb. And in the case of There's Something About Mary, there's some really inappropriate humor. But this one is much more sophisticated, and I really appreciate that. I mentioned music is a big part of the story, and the soundtrack is available on Amazon right now. And in fact, Chris Bauer composed the music in the film, and he also served as I can never say his name, Mahershala Ali's piano double, which I thought was pretty cool. I didn't even realize there was a piano double. I mean, he's playing the piano and his hands are going like that, but the editing is done so well that I was like, wow, he had a piano double. That's pretty cool. He will probably be nominated for another award. He won an Oscar for his role in Moonlight, which won Best Picture of the Year 2 years ago, which was a rated R movie in content and language and other stuff. And so I love that he's really spreading his wings. He sure knows how to pick movies. I'm very, very impressed with him. And then, of course, Viggo Mortensen did an amazing job. I hope he gets nominated for an Oscar because he just knocked it out of the park. He actually got to meet with the family members of his character, Tony, and he realized that he needed to gain some weight, and boy, did he. He's got the proper Italian belly from eating all of that good Italian food. But the only criticism really that I have of the movie is a criticism that other people have made, and that is that some people feel that some of the important events of the 1960s were glossed over. But I disagree because that was not the scope of this movie. It's really a character development movie, kind of a Driving Miss Daisy's type of approach to racism and prejudice. And so if you want to see a movie that kind of condenses all of those events and gives you the big story of the civil rights movie, I highly recommend the movie Selma, which came out a few years ago. It's really great, and it does a good job of outlining those events, and showing how they affected the country and the politics behind them. But that's not really what this movie was intended to be. And so I'm not criticizing it at all for that. I thought for the character movie that it is, it did an outstanding job. So again, I hope that your kids will learn some history, you'll learn some history, and that you'll really get a kick out of it. The audience that I sat with just loved it. So thank you for watching my review. Hope you get to see the movie, and be sure and subscribe, like, and comment. I get lots of people that like the videos, but I want to hear what you're thinking. I want to hear what you thought about the movie as well. Also, be sure to check out my website, moviereviewmom.com. Click on the contact me box and subscribe to my newsletter, and I will send you an email or an ebook with a bunch of ideas on how to get movies for free. So that's it for now. See you at the movies. Bye.